Have you ever walked into a meeting, sat down quietly, and wondered if you even belong there? I've been there. For me, I don't know how many times it happened to me. And it's not easy to feel confident when everyone else is louder and more assertive. And I'm very introverted, shy, and relatively quiet, especially in an environment where everyone is speaking very loud. And it was really difficult for me when I was leading and trying to chime in meetings, and it still is. And that's why I'm very excited that today I'm meeting with Jenny To, who I interviewed in the past, and she's here today to show us that introverted leaders don't need to change who they are to make an impact. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to From a Woman to a Leader. And this podcast is dedicated for you, women in tech, and help you navigate male-dominant field. And I'm thrilled to have Jenny To today. And Jenny is an inspiring coach. She's certified in positive psychology and the founder of River Life Coaching. With her background as a lawyer, now she dedicates her work to empowering introverts like herself to lead with quiet confidence. And this episode, we focus on talking about the unique strength introverts bring to the table and how to make your voice heard without shouting over the crowd. Jenny also shared practical tips for navigating challenging work environments and advocating for yourself in a way that feels authentic. So for all introverted leaders out there that curious how introverts thrive, I think this conversation is going to help you. It's packed with insights that you don't want to miss. So let's dive right in. Hi, Jenny. Welcome. It's such a pleasure having you again in my podcast.
Hi, Limor. It's great to be back, and it's good to see you again, too.
Good to see you, too. And we're going to talk about introverted women leaders. So if you are one, that episode is for you. And we're going to talk about, how women that are introverted and that struggle to make their voice heard, how can you ensure your voice are heard without being loud? So I can very much relate to that because I am an introverted person, and I had that challenge too when I was leading up team.
I think even going a bit wider, a lot of women have that challenge, right? And it hits us even more when we find out we identify as being a bit more introverted than extroverted, and especially if you are in a meeting or in a setup where there are more extroverted male individuals, then you really feel that, do I have to be that loud? Do I have to be that brash to be heard? The answer is no. However, it's not as straightforward as just, okay, then do I just keep quiet and then people will come and say, Jenny, can I have your view? That doesn't happen either. So it's a balance. You do need to find a way that works for you. So in my coaching with my clients, I'm not saying a one size fits all answer, is to actually, first of all, understand authentically, how do you want to be perceived?
Yeah. And I think that one of the questions that I ask my clients, is what do you want people to get out of the meeting, if that's a meeting, right? I mean, what do you want, what the outcome should be? And also when they think of you, what do you want them to, what do you want them to think basically about you? And that we start usually with that. As Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind, right? I mean, I love Stephen Covey. So it's like begin with the end in mind. What do you want people to know and what do you want them to get out of the meeting?
I agree with that. And I also love to kind of like get my clients to think like, just say, okay, let's just use the example of the meeting since we started on it. If you're going into a meeting, ask yourself, like, what's your intention going into this meeting and what's your desired outcome? Not always you get your desired outcome, but it starts with, like I said, begin with an end in mind. What's your intention going into the meeting? To add a layer to that, also recognize that if you're invited to the meeting, they expect you to give something of value unless you're really a quiet participant, as in like you're copied and you're just attending the meeting as an audience. However, most of the time at senior levels, when you're invited to a meeting, your mindset should be, I'm asked to be in the meeting. Therefore, I deserve a seat in the meeting just as much as anyone else. If you begin with that thinking, you're not going to make yourself smaller than you should be, right? So a lot of women feel that I don't really think I belong, at this meeting. And sometimes they even take the seat further away from the center of the table. But why do you do that? If you start with intention, I belong in this meeting, I have just as much to contribute as anyone. You don't need to be loud, but then you feel that, okay, I have something to contribute, I want to contribute. And another layer, because for us who introspect, is to say, if I hold this information back and not say anything, what benefit am I depriving from the participants in the meeting?
Those are all great points. And I think, at least from my perspective, it happened a lot because I was different, right? I mean, not just being a woman, but being an introverted woman and being more quiet, to be honest, a lot more humble than my main counterpart. I like to show my value in actions, not in speaking. And I felt like, am I worthy? Because I was very different. So I think my message also would be like, you are worthy, and you probably bring some other kind of values to the table. You are different, and it's a good thing that you're different.
Mm, mm. I agree with that as well. It's also understanding who else is in the meeting. So I know this probably is going to be another topic about psychological safety, but sometimes you go in the meeting, you don't feel safe, and then therefore you hold yourself back. However, in meetings where you know everyone and there's a healthy level of trust and safety, why are you holding back? Actually, that's a very good practice ground for the more introverted types to practice speaking up, sharing views, and even asking questions. Sometimes the questions that come up in us, we think that, oh, that's a silly question. But for all you know, everyone's thinking that question and no one is asking. So I know it takes courage, but when you ask that question, you get people to start thinking differently.
For sure, I think questions can be very powerful for discussion, just to keep people thinking about things that maybe they haven't thought about, and it shows your level, right? I mean, how you're thinking at things and how you're looking into the space. So it's definitely can be very powerful. And I think it starts with what you said about, first of all, the physical space that you take in the meeting. How do you sit? How do you show up?
Mm,
Right? I mean, sitting straight, with your arms like that. I mean, showing presence, showing you are there, you are important. And in order to do that, you have to feel you are
mm,
important. You have to feel worthy. You have to build that inner confidence in yourself. I think that's kind of, the base for everything. And it's not easy. I know that firsthand. It's not easy. So, kind of, Jenny, tell us, how do you get there? How do you get that confidence built up?
So like it's easy for us to spot the strengths, the successes, and to say nice things to our friends, right? So if I look at you, Limo, I see you as strong and resilient, and from what I know of you, you've been through a lot, and here you are. So it's very easy for me to kind of say that, and I feel confident for you, right? However,
Yeah.
if we look at ourselves, we tend to see the not so good things, or we make small of our own accomplishments. So a healthy place for anyone to start on is to reflect on factually, right? Reflect on your successes, reflect on your career journey or even life journey, what brought you to today. And if you were looking at this person almost like a friend or someone you really care about, take that third party perspective, what would you say to this person? So it helps my more introverted clients to do this exercise to start saying, actually, Limor has gone through so much. She's such a strong person. Rather than I, Limor, am such a
Yeah,
strong person. It's harder to move there. Ideally, we all move there to be able to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, I am strong. I am worthy. I have what it takes to really show up in this meeting. If you can't get there right away, it's healthy to even reflect in writing. Like, Jenny is capable, Jenny has so much to share, and to start that, and slowly you shift. So it starts with the mindset. How do I want to show up in this meeting? And if I show up less than what I want to be, I'm really depriving others of my sharing, of my thoughts, of my views, and therefore the meeting isn't going to be as diverse and rich as opposed to when I share my views.
for sure. And I usually tell my clients, I mean, a lot of them are trying to move up, and one of the things I tell them a lot is like, think of yourself as if you already got where you wanted. Let's say you want to get into a director position, right? And you are right now a manager. Think of yourself as a director and ask yourself, what would a director do? And when you think like that, it helps you kind of look at it maybe as a person, like you said, right? I mean, not as me, but like, okay, what would Jenny, the director, do? What would she think? What would she say? How would she behave? And that way you already start adopting that mindset of the next level of yourself, right? And start behaving in a way. And when people, it's so powerful. Like when you treat yourself as such, other people try looking at you as such. You don't need anyone to hand you something rather than being that person. And people will start respecting you and looking at you differently.
Exactly. And this reminds me of a conversation that I had with another client, and in the beginning she was saying she's already quite a senior leader, but the peers are more male, and she kept saying these gentlemen are at least 10 years older than me. So although I'm a leader, I still feel like you said, no one's actually making you feel this, but I still feel that I'm the youngest and I'm the female here. So through several coaching sessions, I got her to shift to the mindset that yes, I may be younger in terms of age, but for this particular area where they need me in the meeting, I'm actually the most important person because I'm the subject matter expert. So she started putting on not the youngest female leader hat, but the subject matter expert hat. And just that bit, suddenly her conversation it takes on a different tone. Even in the coaching session with me, she feels more confident and she said, yes, I'm the subject matter expert. I can say this thing will not fly and we should go this route, and people respect me for it. Actually, they already respected her for it. So sometimes we hold ourselves back by the beliefs that we think this is how people perceive us.
Yeah, I would say it's more than sometimes. It's most of the times we are the one holding ourselves back, right? I mean, this is a sentence I said several times lately. It's like, no one can hold you back than yourself.
Yeah. And coincidentally, I think I read something this morning is that no one makes you feel this way, whatever feeling that is, unless you allow them to. So if you feel
Exactly.
like, I feel small, I feel, upset, no one's okay, the action may make you upset, but for you to stay in that emotion of being upset, it's you're allowing that emotion to get the better of you.
For sure. And now let's get to that woman. Let's say I feel confident. I show up in a meeting and say, okay, I know I am there. I know the value I'm bringing. But as we said, I mean, I'm not the loudest person and I don't want to be someone I'm not. But the surrounding, like the meeting, the people there are loud. They are talking over each other. Very muscular kind of environment. How do I speak up without being the loudest?
So ideally, you because for introverts we like to plan before going into a meeting. If you know the meeting facilitator, or even the person running the meeting is your manager, you can kind of like get a little agreement up front before all the noise hits in, that you want to talk about agenda A first. Give me the first 5 minutes to talk about it. So I know this plan structure works well for introverts. And after that, once you've spoken, I think the natural flow and you're already feeling confident, you'll be able to interject and add on, because it's a bit more natural. You've already had that speaking time. But I guess the biggest struggle is, in meetings where you don't have that structure and everyone's talking all over each other. So sometimes is telling yourself that when you kind of interject or interrupt, it's not being rude. Because one of the things is we hold ourselves back, we wait for someone to take a breath, and I'm sure, Limo, you know of people who don't need to pause for a breath,
I
right? They
know.
just go on and on. So it is actually just being bold, and saying that I hear what you're saying. However, we still haven't addressed this point, which is actually the key reason why you're here. Can everyone kind of like move back to this? We will definitely listen to the rest of what you're saying later, but let's just remember the agenda for this meeting, right? Even though you're not the organizer. So I know it takes yourself a bit out of the comfort zone to do that. And if you honestly ask yourself, do I feel safe enough to do that? Certain meetings you may not feel that safe. However, in those meetings that you know these people and you know they're just generally extroverted, they don't mean no harm, they won't even feel that you've interrupted them, right? So sometimes ask yourself, if I just continue keeping quiet and let this meeting be hijacked, how will this benefit anyone? Yeah, including myself.
Yeah, and I would say it takes practice. I mean, it's not easy thing to do, and to be honest, I would say it will never be easy for me to do that, because I would like discussions to be more kind of, respectful, and people not talking over each other and allowing others to speak. Unfortunately, it's not always the case. And I think it's not coming from bad intentions. It's just people, a lot of times when they're passionate and that's their style, right? They want their voice to be heard. They may not be conscious enough that they need to give others the space to speak. It's hard, but when you practice it, I think it becomes maybe easier. I don't know if to say easy, but
Yeah.
easier.
When you practice it, it's a muscle that you build, right? So it may not be easy. You might still feel the pain and the discomfort of speaking up. But if you ask yourself, it's really not productive if I let this conversation carry on as it is. And I'm not just doing it for myself, I'm doing it for everyone who's attending. Because, Limo, I'm sure you've been in meetings that run for an hour. At the end of it, you come out and you think, what was that all about? Right? Because there was no structure, no outcomes. So that way, that was a badly planned meeting. So if you could just take that initiative, put a bit of structure, you know, guide that direction of that meeting, how much more productive would everyone feel?
Absolutely. And I've been in many of those. Too many, I would say.
Yes.
And let's maybe shift gears toward talking about career progression and less just about meetings, because we have that problem as well as women, and I know that firsthand. Feel uncomfortable to speaking up on our own achievements and asking what we deserve.
Mm.
It feels like vanity, it feels like bragging, at least for me and for many of my clients. And I work with them to change that. Tell me how it is for your experience with your clients and maybe some tactics to help them.
I mean, a common belief structure that we have is, if I work hard enough, my work should speak for itself, right? That's what I grew up with, in my earlier days in my career. However, we know in this day and age, everything is so noisy, everything is so distracting. Your hard work, if you don't talk about it, will go unseen. So it's just recognizing that that's my belief, but how is that belief helping me now? Right? So it's not about being arrogant or being, bragging about what you've done, but it's hard work, and you've put in the effort. So if you don't talk about your work and it's not seen, how are you doing justice to yourself? So sometimes is getting my clients to think, if I don't look out for myself, who else is going to do that for me? If I don't take charge of my own career progression or my career journey, Who's going to drive it for me? Your boss is not going to say, "Oh, Limo, you've been great. I'm going to give you a promotion right now." Tell me which
Maybe they
manager
would.
does that nowadays.
Maybe they would, but it doesn't happen most of the times.
Yes. So it's just that belief, like, if I talk about this, then I'm bragging, then, I don't like the person I'm becoming. It's not asking you to change into someone you're not. It's just thinking, if I don't do this for myself, if I'm not my best advocate, who's going to advocate for me?
I completely agree with you, but I also think that you have to advocate for yourself in the way that suits your personality and your values. Otherwise, it will feel fake to you. It will not be who you are. You will try to be someone you're not.
That's true. So for leaders who are more introverted, they might not say, "I'm a great leader," but they might say that, my team did this project and the outcomes of this project has, produce ABC result which benefits the organization. So you're putting the spotlight on the project, putting the spotlight on the team, but indirectly everyone knows you're the leader. So you can start with that first, right? Giving credit to the work and giving credit to your people. However, if you're an individual contributor, ask yourself, do I want to continue in this role for X number of years with no progression? If the answer is no, you do need to think, how can I build more visibility? And like you said, be authentic. So maybe it's just have those meaningful one-on-one conversations with the people who matter, getting feedback, getting them to give independent feedback to your manager, right? That's very powerful as well. Help getting people you trust and you've worked with to actually say nice things about you.
I absolutely agree. And feedback, I think that's one of the strategies that I like to use. Because first of all, I really believe that feedback is important for everyone, right? I mean, it's always good to ask for feedback. You don't have to wait for any official reviews in order to have a discussion. And I think that when you ask feedback, you can also showcase your impact, because you can say, "Hey, I've done this and this and this. This is what we have been able to achieve, or I've been able to achieve." And talking in terms of impact, right? Less about "I did this" rather than, "Well, this is the impact I've created." And if you ask for feedback, then you kind of gain both the feedback that you get, like, and maybe some things you can do differently and will help you grow, but also you have showcased what you have done. So you made sure that whatever you have done is known, and also you received feedback.
And to add on that, if you get feedback from a trusted peer, or even if you have a very good relationship with your manager, feedback about how you are being perceived, right? It gives us a healthy balance. Sometimes we're too harsh and critical on ourselves, and getting that kind of feedback from someone trusted who means well, who won't just say the nice things, but actually highlight your strengths and your areas of weakness, right? But it then gives you a more balanced outlook of who you are and how you're being perceived. So, for example, an introvert might be perceived to be very aloof and, not too bothered about anyone else. That could be a difficult feedback to listen. But then, if you want to think, okay, what is one way I can improve on that? It doesn't mean that you go and have small talk at the pantry all the time. But if you meet someone, you think that, oh, I want to get to know this person better, you can have quite a meaningful one-on-one conversation, and that might change that person's perception of you of being aloof.
Love that. And this kind of brings me to the next thing I wanted to ask you. This is about building relationships, right? I mean, because it's so important, and the more you grow in the company, the more you need relationships build up, right? I mean, I had multiple occasions of people I wanted to promote, even individual contributors, but they were growing into a higher level in the org. And those that were very introverted and not many people knew them, or they haven't built relationships with stakeholders, it was much harder for me to influence and convince the promotion. So it's very, very important. The challenging part is, like, for introverted people, it's very difficult. How do I reach out? How do I go about starting conversations? Because it doesn't come very naturally to me, as it would be for someone who is very extroverted and can just basically chat with anyone. So, what are some strategies maybe you have that introverted people can use in order to build relationships, and take into account that nowadays not everyone is like meeting in offices. A lot of people work remote.
It's actually telling yourself, what can I do now that's within my control? So coincidentally, I remember last year I was coaching someone who was working fully remotely, and she wanted to integrate herself in the team, but she just feels like, oh, I shouldn't impose on this person because he's very busy, and I don't want to take up his time. So there's a lot of beliefs that she's imposed on herself to prevent her from even reaching out. So I coached her to say, okay, what's really within your control? What can you do that you are solely in control of? And she landed on, I can send him an email, right? So I can type an email. That's within your control. And I can click the send button. What's not within my control is how he replies. He might not reply. He might reply, yes, but I'm not free this week. We can meet next week. Or he can say, oh, great, let's jump into a call tomorrow, right? So the fact that you focus on what you can really do that's within your control and letting go of the attachment of the outcome. Yes, you are very empathetic, but I kind of got her to think she's a working professional, he's a working professional. Let him decide what he needs to do. You don't have to decide like, oh, is he too busy to read the email? Am I imposing on him? Am I taking up his time? Oh, he's not interested. Why are you deciding that for him? All you need to do is decide for yourself what's within my control. I can send that email, I can send that Teams message. I can even put a calendar invite and say, would this work for you? If not, kindly propose a new time. So it opens up the possibility. And even in conversations, right, I can go up to him and say something, right? Up to him to be interested to respond. If not, I know it hurts, but then, okay, but I've done my part, right? I've said it and I've let go of the attachment of how the person is to be responding.
Yeah, I love that. And it brings another important aspect. What you mentioned is that you need to develop some resiliency to how people respond or not respond, right? Because we tend to think it's all about us, but in most cases, it's nothing to do with us, right? If you send an email or you try to reach out to someone and they don't respond, a lot of times it's just because they are too busy or they have something else going on, and at all related to us. But we tend to take it, at least me, I used to take it very personally. This person doesn't like me, or they don't think I'm important enough. Don't make too much out of it. It's important to start developing that resiliency, because otherwise you take things to heart too much and it will affect your confidence.
And it actually comes from just, our basic human need for connection and for belonging, right? So introverts and extroverts alike. Maybe extroverts don't dwell on it that much, but it basically comes from that need that I want to connect and I want to belong. Even for introverts, I still want to belong, in a
Yeah,
community that I enjoy. So sometimes it's to build our own resilience, right? And how do you build that? Have a very healthy sense of who you are. You are enough as it is for this present moment. Yes, we are all growing, we can all be better, but for today, Limo, you're enough. I'm enough, right? To do what we need to do today. Have that healthy sense, healthy outlook of yourself. And surround yourself with people who can really support you. So when you get all these rejections and no's and face setbacks, you know that at the end of the day, I have people, you know, who I can really rely on. I have those good relationships.
for sure. Wow. So many insights, Jenny. What else would you like to share that I haven't asked?
I like to kind of like circle back and say, when we were talking, like you were saying, so many times, we are the ones holding ourselves back, right? And I had a friend tell me, maybe this can be applied in quite a lot of situations. Say yes to yourself first, right? So I'm not saying be a people pleaser, but if you really want to do something, like for example, this person wants to reach out to someone, say yes to yourself first. Yes, I want to reach out to this person and this is what I need to do, as opposed to saying no to yourself for something that you want. Let the other person say no to you. There's nothing wrong with that. But for what you want to do, for what you really want to pursue, give yourself a yes first and see what happens.
I love it, Jenny. This is so powerful. Say yes to yourself. Wonderful. Before we part ways, tell our listeners a little bit about who you serve and how they can find you.
Okay, thanks, Limor. So my company is River Life Coaching. The website is also www.riverlifecoaching.com. You can find me most of the time on LinkedIn, my company page, or find me Jenny To. I'm based out from Singapore, and I would love to get into just a short call with you if you are interested in coaching. And I coach a lot of introverts, male and female alike. However, I'm really passionate about supporting introverted females because, like Limor and myself, we're both introverts, and I think that's we really understand how an introvert feel. Although everyone is still different, and we just want to pay it back, right? Make it a bit easier for people to really feel that sense of belonging and also to feel that they've been heard and understood. So I hope that this episode you will feel that, okay, someone knows, the challenges that we are going through.
Absolutely, and I'll put your website and LinkedIn URL on the show notes. Thank you so much, Jenny, for speaking with me today. It's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you, Limo.
Thank you so much for listening for my episode with Jenny. And before you go, I want to give you a sneak peek for next week. And super excited that next week I'm speaking with Ivana Nikolic. I actually met her in Vienna for the Female Factor event in the Vienna City Hall in September. And we connected and realized that we have to record an episode. Ivana is a very impressive woman. She started her career actually working for the Macedonian government. When she was in her early 20s, all her peers were white male in their 50s. And she did extraordinary things. She was working with international companies, basically convincing them to invest in Macedonia. I think it's very impressive. And obviously, she is still impressive. Actually, she was selected to Europe's one of the 40 under 40 business leaders. And we talked about her journey, her career. We talked about continuous learning. And I think that this episode is going to inspire you. And definitely you don't want to miss that. I want to thank you, all my listeners, for listening to my podcast and supporting me. And I want to encourage you to subscribe to never miss an episode. If you like the podcast, please share it with anyone you feel it's going to be beneficial for. And contact me if you have any suggestions for guests or for topics you want me to talk about. I'm always happy to get your feedback. Thank you so much for being here and listening to me. I want to wish you a wonderful day and see you soon.